Hi, guys.
Can you hear me, Juliet?
I can.
All right. Hello, Patricia Lariat, Chair of Schools and Education. To my left is Mark Fitzgerald, our Vice Chair. Oh, there's Keen. Hi, Keen. Oh, you have to mute. I did.
You just have to turn your volume.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Across the table, our another committee member is Rich Kachapolo.
Hi.
On the screen, Juliet Pay, Keen Berger, and everyone else, I believe, is traveling. And then, without further ado, I'd like to introduce, well, I'll have you ladies introduce yourself from the Independent Budget Office. And go ahead.
So I'm Julia Conrad. I'm the Assistant Director for the Education team at the New York City Independent Budget Office.
I'm Emma Gossett. I am a budget and policy analyst specializing in education, and I focus on early childhood education specifically.
Should we start with our presentation?
Yes, we can start, because I think that's everybody that said they were going to join in. Thank you.
Interesting. Looking forward to it.
All right. Hey, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I'm excited to present to you on a recent publication titled Utilization Up, Capacity Down, a look at pre-K and pre-K trends in New York City. This is the third publication we've put out in the last 2 years on early childhood education. And this one was looking at enrollment and capacity of pre-K and pre-K programs. I'm going to go a little bit first into just who we are, who IBO is, and then I will give some background, and then finally I will go specifically into the publication. All right, so IBO, the Independent Budget Office, is a nonpartisan city agency. We are a non-mayoral agency, and we provide budget analysis, education policy analysis from our team specifically, and we provide charter mandated reports on the budget specifically, and then other policy areas and research areas. And we also answer questions from anybody. So if you have a question, please ask us, and if we have the data and capacity, we will answer And then the education team specifically, we evaluate the budget for any time it comes out. And then we do the research on New York City students, teachers, and schools. We give testimony and we do presentations like this one. This is just a list. I'm not going to go through them, but this is just a list of recent education team publications. We've looked a lot at fair student funding very recently, but we also have a number of other recent publications all on our website. Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to go in a little bit into the history of early childhood education in New York City through the DOE. So in
So our connection with the City Department of Education, so we are basically completely independent of the New York City Department of Education. We are interestingly actually written into city charter as an agency. So this New York City charter that gives our office the authority to do all of the work we do. Then under mayoral control, when that was renewed in 2008, there was an interest in having some independent office do additional oversight on specifically the school system in New York City. And that's when, written into state education law, our office got additional authority to request data and information from the New York City Department of Education. So our relationship with them, Keen, is we have a memorandum of understanding where through that we can request data from the New York City Department of Education. They don't inform what we research or how we research or what we look at. We get to choose that independently. But we do have a really close relationship with them in that we are in conversation when we request data. And then when we publish reports, we will send those to the DOE and they will give us feedback. Sometimes it's feedback about the data we use or the methods, or sometimes it's just, okay, we're glad, thanks for letting us know that you're going to publish this. But we're truly independent in that we get to decide what we do and how we do it.
Thank you. So before 2014 on this figure, there existed some pre-K programs, but they weren't all under the Department of Education. And so in 2014, pre-K for All expanded the existing options to many more students. So it was about 51,000 students. And then from there, it grew even further until 2017 when pre-K for All began. That began a lot smaller with just 30 programs and 800 students. And they really used existing community-based organizations, CBOs, to build up capacity relatively quickly. So from 2017 to 2021, they built up capacity from 800 students to 34,000. So quite a big jump, and it used existing infrastructure that the city had. And then enrollment has seen slight increases continuing forward, and pre-K has seen relatively stagnant enrollment. So this is from a previous report on 3K, but this is just for some context for the budget and the expenses. So this is looking at the city budget for pre-K and 3K. So when 3K was created, a huge chunk of that initial funding was federal stimulus aid. And so that was temporary dollars, those were expiring, but that was what was used to really build up that program as quickly as they were able to. And since then, they have backfilled all of that. So this was until 2023, and then the expense figures are here. So this is the total spending on that left column, and then I've broken it out by the source of funding. So importantly, until this most recent year, 3K was entirely city funded. So any state that you see, any state funding was for pre-K, and then that federal, again, is that stimulus. So that is for 3K in 22 and 23. And then in the most recent year, I've added onto this figure because it has since gotten later. And in 2024, that total budget, the total spending increased by a 0.1 billion. And then in 2025, I've included the budget, not the spending, because it hasn't finished yet. And I will note that spending does typically exceed budget. So I would not expect that this to be a final number. And this is not a reflection of like cuts that have been made by any means.
This is one of those things that the federal government, if they wanted to screw with New York, could. So I think the budget in New York's 116 billion, about 9% is federal. So call it 11 billion. I mean, it seems like $500 million of it is right here.
Yeah, and this was all temporary, so we actually don't have, so now none of the budget is federal for 3K.
But how are you factoring in childcare block grant funding or Head Start funding? Like to Rich's part, those are federal programs.
That's true. So this is the city and state and federal share of 3K
Yeah.
and 2K programs.
So this doesn't include those sets of, because that's like the majority of seats for 3K.
Correct. And this is only 3K and pre-K. This is not even younger students.
Right.
Yeah.
Emma, so this figure is pulled from a report that Emma put out before that does the similar breakdown for those other early childhood programs. So specifically for the other areas like infant, toddler, subsidized childcare. So we can share that link if you want to see the additional areas of the budget that are supported.
Yeah.
This is specifically though for the pre-K and pre-K parts.
Yeah.
Oh, 1 second. Hi, Ed. Thanks for joining. With Ed joining, we have quorum now. Okay, go on.
Perfect. Okay, so these are some major budgetary changes in the last few years. So in 2023, the administration announced PEGs, the program to eliminate the gap, which were budget reductions. And for 3K and pre-K specifically, the first round, which was in the November plan of 2023, was $82 million of cuts. The second round in 2024 in January was $34 million. Those have since been backfilled, or not backfilled, those have since been reinstated basically, so those cuts are no longer in effect. Additionally, that federal funding was also filled in by city funding. And that was done for 1 year at a time at first, as of 2024 April. But in the 2025 April executive budget, they found state funding to baseline that funding. Additionally, in the 2025 executive budget, there was an additional $25 million for extended day expansion using city funding, $20 million for supporting families without offers, which we know has been an issue for 3K students specifically who have applied to programs, not gotten their choice, and then been without a program. That was state funding. And then finally, they found $55 million in state funding for special education pre-K expansion. Additionally, one of the things that we have heard anecdotally and also has been topic of conversation for DOE has been outreach. And so in the April 2025 executive plan, they added $5 million in outreach within the DOE for 1 year for 2026 only. They have initially actually allocated, they've split that up initially for about 1.5 and 3.5 for 2 different years, but they, in the exec plan, combine those. And then also they added outreach in other agencies. So they are paying $1 million to the Department of Mental Health and Hygiene, of Health and Mental Hygiene, DOHMH, to add to their existing contract with them for outreach. And then similarly to the Human Resources Administration, about $1 million as well for additional outreach, which they're hoping will help fill some capacity that they have.
Juliet, you have your hand raised. You had a question?
That was unintentional, if I do.
Okay.
I don't even know how to do that, honestly, in Zoom.
Is that the mouse?
I think that's the mouse.
Oh.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to go into my recent report, which looked at enrollment and capacity. So I'm going to define that first. So enrollment is just simply children in seats. Capacity is the contracted seats. So for CBO specifically, community-based organizations, the Department of Education contracts with those organizations for a certain number of seats that they think the program can house. And so that is the number that they are funded for. Now, programs don't get that full funding unless they have enrollment to match that. But those are the definitions of enrollment and capacity. So so this is looking at enrollment and capacity for the 2022 to 2023 school year to the 2023 to 2024 school year. So what we saw for 3K is that enrollment increased by about 1.6%, but capacity actually decreased by 2%. For pre-K, we see a similar decline in capacity, but we also see a decline in enrollment. So when we looked at these trends, one of the things we wanted to look at is fill rate. And fill rate, very simply just defined as enrollment over capacity. How much capacity is actually full? So what we found.
Fine capacity is that space and staffing and.
Yes, so available seats that have been contracted with the CBO based on staffing levels, based on space availability, all of that.
Okay.
Yep. So this is the fill rate for those 2 school years. So what we see is in the 2022 to 2023 school year, 3K programs were 80.9% filled and pre-K programs were 78.6% filled. Both of those programs, 3K and pre-K, saw increases in overall fill rate, but that is primarily driven by that decrease in capacity that we saw as opposed to the increase in enrollment.
Can I ask a question? You've made a few different comments around the CBO portion of the portfolio. So these past 2 slides are data just for the school day seats at the CBOs versus like the extended day year / Head Start seats and school and like district school. This is all the seats in the portfolio.
Yes, this is everything. I have a slide coming up right next, actually, or in 2. But yes, this is community-based organizations, DOE district schools, DOE standalone pre-K centers. For 3K, it also includes family childcare centers, and for pre-K, it also includes charter. This is everything.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Thank you.
But we will break it down. So this slide is looking at the seat type. So there are a few different seat types available in these various programs. There's extended day and year, which is full year and as opposed to just the school year. And it's 10 hours of coverage instead of just the typical school day. Head Start is also longer and also year round. But importantly, as was mentioned earlier, it is not fully city funded. It is a federal program. So what we found for seat types is that all of the 3K seat type fill rates increased. And for pre-K, all of the seats except for half day saw a percentage fill increase. And we know that the DOE is actually winding down their half day seat program. So this is not a surprising finding. They are transitioning more towards those full day seats. Those are left over. So what we found, again, is that this is primarily capacity decreases, as you can see in the capacity, although it's a lot of numbers for you to look at. But
I can just also give everyone a little bit more context of half-day seats are pretty much exclusively at like a handful of religious programs at this point. An extended day and year as well as Head Start seats are only eligible for the vast majority are only eligible for low-income families. Head Start seats technically can have 10% that are non-eligible kids, but they don't really get matched there. So that's why there's such drastic differences in the data.
Is there a target fill rate percentage?
That's a great question. So the DOE says that they would like everybody to get to basically 95-ish%. But we see very few programs that achieve that.
Yeah, I think, Rich, I don't think that will ever be possible unless there's like major right sizing of the program. Because of declining birth rate, declining enrollment, like that, unless there's like a really drastic overhaul of matching the types of seats in the right communities, like to a few slides ago around the 3K budget for expanding where kids are not getting offers, right? Like the portfolio has never really matched the exact trends. Like that's why some of these fill rates are lower as well.
Do you feel the class size targets are too high or?
class size targets.
Well, if they're,
No.
Okay.
It's more neighborhood specific.
Yeah, what we've heard anecdotally is that it's a matter of having a program,
Yeah.
the program that you want in the location that you want,
Yeah.
accessible to you.
Right. Like if you're a family that lives uptown and you apply to the program down the street, it fills and you get an offer to a school in Chinatown, like, and you have a 3-year-old, they're not going there.
yeah, I see.
And then the next table looked at the type of programs, as mentioned earlier. So community-based organizations both saw increases in their percentage fill. And very interestingly, community-based organizations actually saw increases in enrollment for 3K, while the DOE pre-K centers saw decreases in enrollment. However, the trend is not mirrored for capacity. So despite there being an increasing enrollment in CBOs, they decreased the capacity. DOE district schools, interestingly, both saw decreases in fill rate. And we don't know why, but one interesting anecdote is that the class size law is being scaled up right now. And pre-K centers, so DOE district schools specifically, are also seeing decreasing enrollment for pre-K, increasing for 3K, but only slightly. And we know that those are classrooms that are taking up space that they may need in the future for K through 12. We don't know whether they will actually move out pre-K. We can't speak to DOE's planning, but that is something I know that people are paying attention to. Yeah. So this is, now we're going to look specifically at community board 2s. And so you guys, this is community board 2 on the left and then the school districts on the right. So community board 2 is within school district 2 as well. So we did do district level analysis. Now, importantly, so family child care centers that have 3K seats are in people's homes. So we don't have access to geographic information about that, so we can't actually map those. So these next figures do not include those.
There aren't any FCCs in our district.
Oh, super helpful to know. Yeah,
Is that true? I don't.
Yeah, in our specific district, there are no FCC seats that are a part of 3K. There might be infant and toddler seats,
Yeah.
but there are none that are a part of the 3K program.
Perhaps. Let's look into that.
Yeah, I mean, I think 3K capacity is something that's top of mind for me right now. Yeah.
Certainly. So at the bottom here, I have the citywide figures for the maximum and minimum seat utilization rates that we saw in those 2 different school years we've been discussing. And then the top has the 3K and 3K for those years for District 2. So for citywide levels, it ranged for 3K from 61% to 97%. So it's a quite wide range, and community school and school district 2 is pretty smack dab in the middle, a little bit on the higher end. You're at 86% for this most recent school year. And there is actually both an increase in capacity and an increase in enrollment for 3K. So that was interesting to see year over year. For pre-K, similarly, there was an increase in enrollment and an increase in capacity. And you are also similarly in the middle for overall for pre-K. So it ranged from 66% to 89% fill, and you guys are at 72%. That is our presentation. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for being interactive with the committee. Does anyone else have questions?
So, yeah, what does this tell us?
No, I think that's a great question. So I think, honestly, the lack of similarity in the trends between capacity and enrollment is what's really interesting, that they don't follow the same trend. So that even though enrollment we see is increasing in 3K, we don't see that similar trend in capacity.
Mhm.
And I think part of that, the DOE has said that they are looking into shifting seats to better meet demand. And so that may reflect that, right, is that they're moving seats where they need to be. That's the hope. We don't know that for sure. Next projects will look at demand and supply. But I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that the enrollment changes don't match the capacity changes.
Yeah.
And we see that especially at the district level. So it's, I don't have it in the slides, but in the actual report, there's a district by district breakdown. And you can see it varies widely, especially in the changes year over year.
Is it people coming back to the city? Is it COVID?
I mean, are people coming back to this?
I don't know.
No, enrollment is overall at like lowest it's been 3K through 12th grade in New York and most major cities since COVID.
And I think we saw, we track this in different places, but we overall for the K through 12 system too saw really dramatic enrollment decreases during the 2021, 21, 22 school years. It's tapered off a bit since then, but one of the interesting things is that enrollment is tapered off as we've grown out our 3K and pre-K programs. So increased enrollment there makes the overall enrollment numbers look better too.
Yes.
It's sort of an interesting, you have like a lot of trends going in a couple different directions. I would say the last school year was the first year where we saw a very slight, but I would really just say it's nearly the same enrollment count. So I would say we're in a moment of decreasing overall enrollment still. But then we also had a lot of new arrivals to New York City over the last couple of years, which did increase enrollment in certain areas. I think what Emma mentioned before in her research points to is that the program type really matters, the seat type really matters, and as we've talked about, the geography really matters. And it might be really localized what those needs are, which I think is why it's so perfect that we're having this conversation, because you would know as community board too, what are the needs of your community. And that kind of conversation between the DOE planning and communities, I think, is where maybe the path forward should go, so that you know what are the needs within this and what kind of outreach is necessary, because clearly they're adding funds to communicate, and that might be something that's needed on the community level also.
And I think the added funding for outreach is really like, it's indicative of their desire for more outreach within different organizations too, not just DOE, they give money to HRA, to DOHMH. So I think they're really trying to focus and trying to listen, I hope, to what communities really think is necessary and what they need, so that they can reallocate those seats in the best way possible.
They, the DOE?
Yes.
And there also used to be a huge outreach budget, and this current administration kind of got rid of it. And it seems like maybe some of this is clawing that back. I don't know. I mean, there used to be a pretty expansive ad and out, much larger than $5 million a year.
I mean, even if the money's there, you know, will the administration turn around and actually perform that outreach?
100%, exactly.
Maybe not this administration, but we are talking about 2026.
No, exactly. Yeah.
The first year they added outreach funds, they actually didn't spend them that year and they rolled over to the next.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. Like, not only you have to allocate the funds, then you have to make a plan to use it. And I think at that point, the pre-K for all is seen as like, there was the conversations and the memories that there were people in the street going door to door. There was a big concerted effort to get enrollment, and that's what it took to increase that enrollment. And we didn't see as much of that same concerted effort for the 3K rollout for whatever reasons, but that might explain it.
I could tell, I mean, the outreach team that was originally brought in for the pre-K for all expansion was spread incredibly thin. It started to work a lot on the Shazat work, which was at parallel at the same time as a lot of the initial 3K work. And so the team was just dispersed and then kind of dissolved, and then is now, I guess, coming back. I don't know.
Wow, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, we've been in conversation with DOE to ask, like, what are they going to do with the outreach budget, and they have yet to tell us, at least.
That sounds right. I'm sure they don't know yet.
We don't know.
That's what they said to us.
Yeah. But and I'd say like this, a lot of Emma's budget analysis is from the last financial plan, not the adopted budget that just passed this week. So we will have more information soon, and we're gonna plan to follow up with DOE about any new ads. So we're happy to answer questions, or if you've heard things, we're happy to follow up once we have answers to those. Because as Emma started us off, a lot of what we do is answer questions. So we're here to kind of introduce ourselves, but if in a week you think, I heard this headline and I'd like to know more about that, please, our goal is to be in conversation. Yeah.
Right, I wondered what the demographic trends are. I mean, the fact that the birth rate is going down, is that relevant in New York City? Is that
Yes.
part of it?
Yeah, we've started to look at, we have a team that's looking at the birth trends. It's sort of interesting because when we want, like, for example, Emma and I talk about this kind of question a lot. What would be, how many people might be interested in 3K? It's hard to get a count of how many, you could use census data for how many 3-year-olds there are, but how do you know how many people want to enroll their kids in a 3K program? It might not be the same number as want to enroll their kids in a pre-K program.
Yeah.
And it's very different than kindergarten, where, maybe not kindergarten, first group, where you have mandatory enrollment. So it's hard for us to get sort of a sense of like, who is the 3K population that would be served by this. That wasn't quite your question, but I wanted to raise that too. We have been looking at some demographic trends. I don't think we have too much research to support yet, but we are hoping to follow up with that too about birth rates.
Yeah, we, in terms of demographic trends too, the publication right before this one on 3K and pre-K as well was a demographic snapshot. It's not over time, but we can absolutely send that to you.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat too.
Yeah.
Right, and socioeconomic too?
Yeah.
I mean, people who have 3-year-olds have, if they have money, they have choices, and if they don't have money, they don't have so many choices. Is that relevant? I mean,
Well, the majority of
Absolutely
like,
relevant.
yeah, but a good portion of the seats, Keen, are actually exclusively for lower income families. I think for me, it's a lot of it is about where are those seats as compared to those families and vice versa. And making sure that I think that the seats were initially rolled out in a way that was really fast. And I think we're at an opportunity now where there's a lot more data and I'm not sure it's being used. And I think like that would be my push to like circle back with you guys of sort of like, I think that like the next layer down of the next report you said you were going to be working on around like looking at more of the demand pieces and like how many kids are getting offers. Like I know anecdotally that it's still around, you know, in our area, it's only around 70-ish% of families are getting an offer to something that they applied to. And so I think it's for me thinking about where is that cross section of needs, the seats, and how that intersects to really be appealing. I agree that we're never going to get to a place where there are as many kids enrolled as 3K as like kindergarten, but
Yeah, demand is definitely the next step. I'm looking at that right now. We'll be looking at like offers, whether it's their first offer, their second offer. It's really interesting. Yeah,
yes.
and we'll be looking geographically as well.
And I think that the cross section there will be really illuminating, because I think that's been the biggest issue. And I think too, where some of the capacity constraints come from. I know, for example, in some areas that were oversaturated in seats, a lot of CBOs ended up going out of business. And so I think understanding that cross section would be super helpful.
so what is your take on, what do you suspect, what do you think is happening in community or two? You, yes, Julia.
Oh,
You know
me,
a lot.
Juliet. I do know a lot. I did this work for a very long time, and do it nationally now. I think right now pre-K is good in our area. Like we have a point where we're at almost all like anybody that wants to go to pre-K can go to pre-K through a public program. 3K is not that, right? And I think that the data shows that we are at a point where there just is more demand than there are seats in our specific area, again, like for the type of seats that we need. And it means that because there are families that are not getting offers in the neighborhood, they're getting offers really far away. And so I think that's where capacity just as a standalone data item can be misleading, because if it's in the wrong, like to the point that the example I gave earlier of like, that is a real example of giving a family from East Harlem an offer in Chinatown. Like they're never going to take that. Last year, there were families from Manhattan that got offers to Brooklyn that they didn't apply to. So there's clearly a mismatch. And so I'd say that it's probably the right number of seats, just in the wrong places still.
I think some private programs have gone away
Yes.
because of the pre-K, not the 3K, but the free pre-K just under.
Yeah. And it meant that a lot of like private programs also started to change their offerings. A lot started expanding to be more meeting the half-day needs that were taken away by the Department of Ed. And so you really saw like just a shift in the overall portfolio. But yes, I very transparently worked a lot on the expansion of pre-K. In fact, extended day and year, I invented that name. It used to be called something really confusing and people didn't understand what it meant.
Well, honestly, we're always looking to learn from people who are, so, I mean, we maybe talked to some of your colleagues who are former.
You have.
Yeah, I think maybe we can follow up, because it would
Yeah,
always.
no, I'm happy to connect with you guys separately if that would be helpful. Yeah.
Great.
Yes. I do now like advise other schools and school districts on mostly enrollment stuff, but
Okay.
yes.
Could you guys elaborate more about the 5 million? You said that was taken away. You said,
That was that was moved for outreach.
yeah.
Oh, so yeah, so initially, they had put about, it was either 1.5 or it was 3.5, I may have them switched, but in fiscal year 2025 and 2026. And they didn't spend that initially in the fiscal 25, so they shifted that over, which is how we got the total for 5 million now in 2026. So they didn't cut anything, they didn't take anything away, they just moved it over because they didn't use it that year.
For outreach.
For outreach. Yeah, within DOE.
And so just because it's in the budget, it also doesn't mean they're going to do anything with it.
Really? Oh.
So that's what happened last year.
All right.
Yeah, and I think like we always track budget as sort of the plan and the proposal, and then we track spending as what actually happened. And we love to report on both, because I think the budget gives you a sense of what's being negotiated and where did we land. And then our actual spending gives you a sense of what I think Emma mentioned this too, like often spending exceeds budget in some categories, and we actually might even expect that because there's a little bit of tweaking at the end of the year. But both of those I think are relevant to try to understand what's being negotiated, and there's a lot of politics and different power and stakeholders involved, and then what actually gets spent is a sense of what happened on the ground. I'm gonna throw our emails in the chat too, if it's helpful. Let's do it. Yeah. Emma is our EC expert, and we would love to follow up again, Juliet, too.
Yes, Emma, I can email you.
And then for all other IBO related education, we study everything. So if there's anything else that you're interested in, please feel free to reach out to me too.
Actually, on the Shazat, I recently published a report on the Shazat.
Yes, you did.
So we do other stuff too.
We do.
All right.
Great. Okay, great. I'm gonna leave this too.
Perfect.
And you said you'll send us, you updated the slides from what I sent to the
Yes,
committee?
Yes,
All right.
we'll send those to you as well by email.
Thank you both for coming in person.
Thank you so much. Of course, anytime. Please stay in touch.
Oh.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Happy holiday weekend.
Hopefully everyone will be on the beach. That's good.
All
I
right.
think it's
Um,
nice weather for those who are still in town.
I'm gonna be here on the 4th.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very glad you exist.
Yeah.
Seriously.
The work.
Thank you.
Okay. Well. No, there's a second agenda.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
There's a second agenda item. We're doing a
District names.
preliminary, I emailed everyone.
Yep.
Everyone got it? We're gonna be discussing, the capital expense from the schools that I heard from right before school ended. For fiscal year 26, most of that money will be awarded this month. So we won't know what got funded until September. But I still asked around our schools. Let me share my screen. There, okay. So I asked around, I sent an email to all our schools that I do every year, PS3, 41,
75 Morton.
75 Morton,
City
Hey,
Ass,
city.
The Door,
yeah,
what is it called? One of the big,
Broom Street
Broom
Academy,
Street
Chelsea
Academy.
Korea Technical, New York High
high
School.
school.
And then there's one other school that I didn't know existed
Until our cannabis meeting.
Until our cannabis meeting.
We found it.
It's a D75 school in Midland High School, which is co-located with City Ave School
Oh, really?
on Clarkson. And that number, their number is N721 Occupation Training Center. And once I found them, I connected them with Nicole Barth in council, Councilmember Watcher's office, because they had some needs. They said and I'll go over the needs that I got. So, so with Harvey Milk, everybody's all about technology. They still want technology. Harvest Collegiate, that principal, she'll probably join our meeting in September when we discuss this again, but she always wants more technology. Last year, she got funded for those, what is it, MacBooks that she wanted, and she asked for that again for fiscal year 26. PS3, they still want the ASD Horizon D2 program. They still want us to advocate for that. Chelsea Career and New York High School, they share a gymatorium. They want that gymatorium, to
Renovated.
yeah, they want to renovate it. They've been asking for it for a few years now. So, and if they said if the gymatorium could not be fixed, they would like their air conditioning system overall, because there's some classrooms that don't have any air when it gets warm and, spring into summer. PS 130, Rennie Fong School, he said that he wanted an upgrade to his windows and light fixtures, which he asked for last year. So he's still advocating for that, which is in the SCA 5-year plan. The D75 school that's co-located with 75 Morton is still advocating for the same things. We don't know if they got funded this month, much later. So they said if they don't get it, they still want us to advocate for it. The middle and high school D75 program that's co-located with City As wants accessibility upgrades, sensory friendly design elements, and age appropriate modifications to better serve their students, like in the lobby, and also their cafeteria renovated. We're also pushing in our capital expense for 100,000 square foot new school built at Bleecker Street. We can't forget. We always have to keep that in there in case we all leave or our limit is up. Yeah. So I have to keep that in. And then before coming to the meeting, I finally heard back from the principal at 75 Morton. She said that they just got approved for the playground project, but the start date is pending. Remember, they came and said that they received money from Councilmember Botcher's office, but they weren't able to spend it because they needed the space throughout the year. But now the playground project was approved, but they don't know when they're going to start. And she said, and they need upgrades to their classroom smart boards and technology. And that was the most recent thing that I heard before coming tonight. On the expense side, we're still pushing for what we pushed for the year before. The class size citywide, 137 million for hiring teachers, which is in the 5-year phase-in for 2028. NYC Men Teach.
Like that one. Always like that one.
Yeah, allocate funds for teacher training, writing curricula, structured literacy approach. That's for kids that suffer with dyslexia, that's,
Advanced learning.
yeah. Allocate funds to maintain the most recent baseline funding for arts education. Allocate funds for seeker, funding, citing, and building new public schools. And 6, I think that you added that one last year, Juliet, right? Was that the one you added?
Like a-
No, I added one around 3K last year,
Is it
but I
here?
like before and after school too.
Okay,
It's not, but I think we should probably continue to advocate for 3K.
so
I think probably, I can send you a sentence if that would be helpful.
yeah, please.
I would
thought it was
also
in here.
probably tweak,
Which one?
I can do it myself. Number 3, instead of like structured literacy, we might want to just put like science of reading or something, which is like a
Okay.
little bit more on brand.
Okay, all right. So you'll send that to me
Yeah, I can.
and that sentence.
Yes.
So, based on, so this is just a preliminary, because we're gonna revisit this again once the funds are released in this month to see what got funded and what needs to be advocated for. So we'll revisit this again. I'll reach out to the principals, like, I guess in August, to find out if they got funding and what needs, help.
They
And
And did they get anything in this arena for, from participatory budgeting?
nobody, no. I mean,
So it's-
last year, Randy said he wanted, what is it, a tree, because a tree died in front of his school, so I put him in touch with, Councilmember Marte's office, and they got him a tree.
Quick on
He wanted tree guard, I don't know if he got the tree guard.
tree replacement's been happening.
Yeah. And I told him about the participatory budgeting when it was out, that he could participate in that if he wanted something funded. And I try to tell all of the principals that that is another funding stream that they should also exploit
Yeah,
with their PTAs and PAs.
right, good work.
Yeah, and so the order in which I sent the capital and expense around, that's pretty much how we're gonna advocate for it when the district needs, when we have that conversation in the fall, unless something else changes. Okay, so that's basically it, guys. Anything else to add? Did you have any other questions?
No, nothing else I can think of. And did we look at the responses we got last year?
Yeah.
And was there anything?
Well, I before this meeting, I reached out to all the principals and asked them, like, we're revisiting this, what do you want us to advocate for?
I get it. No, I mean, when we submit it to the city, they write back at some point and they say,
Right.
we had to reject that, we try it a different way.
I did look at that. They rejected that. I think they rejected that,
Oh, yeah.
the ASD gym, that for PS3.
Yep.
And I don't know about the D75 one, that sensory.
The only thing I'd say is sometimes they suggest going about it a different way. Like sometimes they'll say, we can't do that, but you should go to your council,
Right.
It's not always
I'll look
helpful.
at that again.
They're not always helpful.
I just perused it quickly. I didn't go into, but because it has everybody's.
Yeah, it's got all of them.
Yeah.
Many of the parks ones are, we can't do that, but you can get it from the council member.
So,
Nothing more creative than that usually.
yeah, and then I told you that I tried to put in touch the principals with Councilmember Marte's, office, Carolina Rivera. There was a school, which is that one, that I put her in contact, which is that school. Like all the council members, I put the principals in contact with their person to kind of advocate for that money.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I know in the past you've had trouble getting in touch with PS41. Did you hear back from them this year? Because I noticed they're not on the list again.
I do a lot of outreach to them, but they never,
Sometimes they do. I mean, we spoke to Michelle and we
Yeah.
spoke to all of them. What did they say?
but you know what,
We didn't get a response.
you know, but not about what they need.
I
What
see.
they needed was,
Oh, yeah. And they
it
do
was
do
Shirley
that.
Sickland that reached out because they wanted to do a combined meeting with schools about the street,
Mm,
and they said that they needed one more crossing guard. So I just need to follow up
I see. Okay, cool.
with that. They wanted a crossing guard. 75 Morton said they wanted an extra crossing guard at dismissal. So I didn't really need to put that in. It's not like a capital.
Yeah, they haven't given us anything since 2022.
I see. Okay.
But, you know, PS 41 is a very well-resourced school, and when they
Yeah.
need things, they typically just get stuff for themselves.
Yeah,
We were there for 7 years, so.
Yeah.
You know, we talked to them, they're like, hey, you know,
yeah. I
they
was
got
just
the
wondering,
bathroom
because,
done, they got the cafeteria done a couple of years ago. There are no elevators in the school. They aren't gonna try to convert it so that it's, you know, can serve kids with special needs. They're never gonna do that, so I don't know that they
Yeah.
really.
I
Yeah,
was just wondering because they're not on the list. I was just curious.
yeah,
But that makes sense.
But last year they did get funding for a bathroom that we saw.
Yeah, but we've been asking for that forever,
That's, yeah.
so.
Wait, I want to stop sharing my screen. Oh, here it is.
But we can reach back out to them. I can call Michelle.
Yeah, and then the newest thing that I found out, and this was because I was canvassing on primary day. Clarkson Street will be closed in the fall. It's gonna be a school street, what do you call that? There's a
An open
terminology,
street.
an open street.
The open streets, yeah.
Yeah, for both schools that are co-located there, City High School and that D75, that's in that, in the fall. And they got funding for that, from okay, all right, well, that's all I found out. So
It's
that's gonna
supposed
go-
to be an open street, so we'll see.
Yeah. So you'll see that walking around if you're in the neighborhood. So that's basically my outreach and our 2 agenda items. I don't think there was anything to really act on with what they
Something to
just.
vote on. Are we gonna codify that in September?
Yeah, we're gonna, yeah,
Oh, yeah, probably.
yeah, 'cause
Right.
I have to reach out again. to
We'll
see if
reach
they
out
got
to the-
funding.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and we'll reach out to the schools again and ask if there's, because something could come up over the summer.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
and
all.
then we're not meeting in August, so we'll start up again in September, and I think our meeting is towards the end of the month. I
Yeah,
think it's the
do a
29th.
back to school meeting.
Yeah,
Oh, wait, no, we have, no, we're gonna do the back to school meeting probably with Kelly.
yeah, we usually do a back to school with the superintendent.
Nice.
Great.
Okay, and thank you guys for coming in.
Zooming in.
Yeah, and thanks for coming in.
Sure.
So with that, thanks, guys.
Meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, Ed.
Enjoy your Fourth. Happy Fourth.
Enjoy the.
Have a good one.
I think.
All right.